Welcome to my shop. My name is Steve and this video is going to be on the shaper. The cutter I'm going to be using is a Garniga. This is an adjustable radius chamfer rebate cutter, and I'm going to use it with an outboard fence and dimension wood and put a radius on all four edges. So let's get to the shaper. Okay, I'm at the shaper now, and this is a Garniga shaper cutter. This particular cutter is no longer manufactured. It is an adjustable radius or chamfer shear rebate cutter. A similar cutter is available. Garniga merged with Zuwani and I believe it's TWT. So you can get a similar cutter to this from Rangate. This one is a 50 millimeter high cutter. Right now it's got 3 millimeter radius knives in it. It's got 2 knives that are adjustable in height and 2 that are fixed on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is take these 3 millimeter knives, radius knives out, and replace them with 1.5 millimeter radius for this project. That knife, the shear cutter knife, was just barely grazing that, just moving it back ever so slightly, and that's probably about where I want it. So my fence depth is correct. My spindle height should be close to correct. Let's close this fence in somewhat. Don't do what I just did. What I did, I was pushing this in, I was just checking for a partial cut, and I was intending on pulling it out. But when I pull it out, instead of pulling it out, it went in, and it took a big chunk out of that wood. It's pretty smooth, but it could have kicked back and caused me some serious harm. So hate it when that happens, but hey, it did happen to me, and I'm going to learn from that lesson, because the shaper has the highest pucker factor of any machine I've got in my shop. So I'm going to set this up for the outboard fence, and when I use the power feeder, it's going to be driving against the outboard fence, not the Eigner fence. So in order to do that, my stock that I want is about 82, should be a little over 82 millimeters. I'm 82.70, and this is one of my sample pieces. And what I want to do is take off about 1 millimeter from this. So I'm going to use some setup blocks. I think I had a video on this thing before, but I've got some various size blocks, and then I'm going to use a 1/4 inch, which is 6.35 millimeters, and that'll get me to 81.35 nominally, and I can verify that. Should be close to it. 81.336, I think that's pretty close. So I'm just going to use these setup blocks to set the fence up, using this fence as a reference. So now that I've got my stop blocks in there, since this dimension between the fence, inboard and outboard fence is less than 82 millimeters, this won't fit. So I need to move my fence back. And I better slide these out of the way. And what I want to do is just make sure this will fit. Better move that back a little more. Reason is I just don't want to get bound up should I have any variations in stock fitness. So now when I drive this cutter or this piece through this cutter head, applying force to the outboard fence, that should dimension me to approximately 81.35 millimeters or so. And I need to change the direction. Climb cut will be going that way, so instead of against the rotation of the cutter, I'll be going with the rotation of the cutter. Okay, I thought I'd show you the test pieces here. I'm not sure how well this camera is going to pick this up. This is the first test piece. Multiple passes. This is the bottom. This is the top where I was adjusting the knives, and you may be able to see there's just a little ledge there. I just dropped it too far. So I went and did another test piece, readjusted the knives. This is test piece number 2. And I got a nice round over on both edges. So then I've got set up to do one edge. I would like to I think we set the shims up at 81.35 millimeters. That's what we should have ended up with. And that's what we actually ended up with, 81.39. And test 1, 81.37 millimeters. So that's that shim system works for me. So I'll get the hearing protection on, and I'm just going to run all the short pieces first. Tell you what, here's one with a little burn mark on the saw, and let's do that one, see what we end up with. I've got all these. There's a little bit of chip out on this one. This is the one with the reversing grain. That will depend upon what the opposite side looks like. I'm sure that will become the back of the shelf. So now I've got all my one edge milled on all the pieces, and what I need to do is reset the fence. I don't need to do anything with the cutter head. I just need to reset the fence. I need to move this back to 0. Okay, so now my fences are back back even again. What I need to do now is position the fence forward to where the cutter's flush. Flush with the outside of the fences. And I'll go ahead and lock those down just in case there's any variation. So my final dimension, what I want to get 80 millimeters. And the easiest way to do that, I'll take 2 of my shim blocks, a 30 millimeter and a 50. And this dimension is not critical, it's just what I wanted. 80.25, that's 80.28. I think that'll be good. So I'll just use these spacer blocks. Take my Allen key, loosen the fence. Press the fence up against the spacers and retighten it. And then I'll move the fence back. We'll just move it back 2 millimeters. So I think it wraps that about wraps this video up. I've used the power feeder, the outboard fence, and a climb cut with a shaper to round over all 4 corners of the material for my upcoming project. And overall, it did a very good job. The knives are just kind of a pain to adjust, but once you get them set, they're right on and do an overall good job. Before I leave, I'd like to talk a little bit more about my near miss. I had the start of a kickback on a shaper, which isn't fun. Kickbacks aren't fun on anything, but particularly on a shaper, because you can dive that wood in that shaper and just turn that material into a chipper shredder. It took about 1/4 of an inch out of that piece of wood. I was using a short piece of wood. I should have been using a longer one, but I was trying to preserve material from my project. It was scary. If I'd been using a longer piece and pulled it out, I think that would have been fine. But using a short piece like this would have been fine too if I just continued through the cut and maintained the pressure on both the in-feed and out-feed fence, and just made a full cut instead of a partial. So anyway, that's my lesson learned on this one. But if you got any questions or comments, please post them, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.